when. And in the meantime, two of the Ksik Stakii project's main organizers have graciously agreed to join us here on Zoom for a short introduction to the project and to answer some questions. Gerald Wagner, who still not with us yet, but Gerald Wagner is the director of the Blackfeet Environmental Office. Will hopefully be here with us in a moment. And Termaine Edmo, who's already here, is the climate change coordinator for the Blackfeet Environmental Office. And the two of them, along with many other partners I know, were at the forefront of developing the Ksik Stakii project, as well as the Blackfeet Climate Change Adaptation Plan. And this restoration work was a key part of that plan. So after a short presentation, Termaine and Gerald will be available to answer some questions. And then, as I said, we'll have that option to join some breakout rooms, and we'll all come back together just before 1, just for a really brief wrap up. So Termaine, I guess, do you wanna take this? And we'll hopefully we'll see if Gerald can join us too. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time out of your busy schedule and day. And it's great to see you.
Yes, thank you for having me. So, Oki ni stuni danaku awanaki, nixist honesta Stanski, ginst honesta bitawasta. Again, thank you for this beautiful award that hangs proudly in my office for all the hard work. We have our research paper poster behind me, and just various our simple little handout that's in the Beaver Mimicry guidebook to a 5-step process to building BDAs. Something easy read that we did for the ranchers and farmers. But first of all, my name is Termaine Edmo, and I'm the climate change coordinator, but more importantly, I'm a cultural youth mentor, and that has really helped frame the work I do here at the Blackfeet Environmental Office. So what is the Ksik Stakii project? So Ksik Stakii is beaver and Blackfeet. So before I begin, we're going to take you back to the beginning of time and do something that my people have done for thousands and thousands of years, and that's to envision this story as I am telling it. So we start at the beginning of time when the man first discovered land, and that was Old Man, that was Napi, our creator. And so he had wanted, he was wanting something more in the landscape, and the animals, there was the beaver, there was the loon, there was the muskrat, and the crow. And so those 4 animals were the first in the creation story. So our creation story is of the land today. And so they tried and tried, and Napi was a trickster. Napi is Na meaning one and B meaning 2 beings in one. So he was good and he was bad. So he taught us many things, but he also goes into these stories of our worldly view. And to understand it, we were told these stories at nighttime, and we gathered our own analysis from these stories to learn from his mistakes. So as the animals all tried to dive down, the water was just, the earth was filled with water, and it was just completely covered. And so they tried, he sent them down, and he thought, beaver, he told the Ksik Stakii, you're really wise and you provide a lot for everything around you. I know you'll be certain to bring me back some mud. And he went down without his luck. He tried mighty and he could not do it. And so he come back up, and then it was the smallest of them, and it was the muskrat. And it was the muskrat who made it, and he almost didn't make it. And he come back up barely there, and he had the soil underneath of his nails. And so they dried it out, and Napi took that dirt, blew in the air, and blew the land. And then that's when he decided to have the beaver, who was the landscape engineer, to create create all beings underwater, because he knew how smart the beaver was. He knew what it would take for the other animals to respect this leadership. So that is when he gifted the beaver the underwater power, and he gave him the ability to live on land and water. And so that is where we start. And that is where our man comes into place. And he was gifted the beaver bundle. And so this is why the Beaver Project is really paramount to who we are as Native people, and why these roles are critical. So with each specific task, the Napi gave the beaver for the beaver bundle, we had over 500 songs. We've had over all the waterfowl and the ecology of our landscapes come from the beaver. And so each artifact that is in our beaver bundle has a specific song and a specific dance that was transferred to the beaver, from the beaver to the man, because Napi gave him the ability, right? And so the beaver turned and gave it to man after Napi had created man. But that's a different story for a different day. So after the gifts were given, the beaver bundle was really the engineer, right? Our landscape engineer, and what we look to provide us was sustainability. And so the beaver bundle map guides us through our landscapes and how we live, how we get our vegetation, and how we get our food sources and utility. The beaver provided all of that for us. And as long as we provide this distinct way of life, our lands will be stewarded the way it was designed to. And so we took that and meshed it with Western science and really put a little different spin on the beaver mimicry. And so, we really began to look at our leader, our elder, the beaver. And so we turned to these elders, we turned to these traditionalists, and they came out and they gave our Native Science Fellows these songs that were given from the beaver. They gave them these distinct way of life so that our project will be successful. So we're really bringing healing back to our land with our culture and identity. So as drought continues to worsen, we really found a way to mitigate some of that climate change through this beaver mimicry and natural water storage. And we really noticed, the winds are, I don't know how many of you have been to the Blackfeet Nation, but the winds here are like hurricane winds, when it's, everything goes, and that the sediment, everything, and we learn to live with, we adapt to our surroundings. And so each plant, each insect, each wildlife, everything has a spirit and a way of life. And so we really had to tie it all in to make it who we are as the Stakii Beaver people. And so as we look to the creation story, the beaver was really the pillar of our existence. So that's how it kind of come into play with the Blackfeet Climate Adaptation Plan, which Gerald can give you a little bit of background.
Welcome, Gerald. We're glad you could make it. Oh, You have to unmute.
Can you hear me now? All right. I want to apologize for pulling up a little short here. And I was just catching kind of the end of what Termaine was saying about our Ksik Stakii project and how it relates to the people and to the land. And I think she is passing the ball off to me in terms of what, Termaine?
Just the background of how the beaver mimicry started with the water sector.
Okay, we had gotten in and received some funding from the Interior on developing a climate change adaptation plan to develop in partnership with Salish and Kootenai. I was working with Mike Durgalo at the time, and they had already established theirs and we were just starting ours. And we got in and we did our work, some work we had with CLLC out of Bozeman. And we worked through and developed our plan. We worked it into, I think, 10 different sections, looking at the air, the water, the land, forestry impacts, fish and wildlife impacts, cultural impacts, health impacts, and what could we be doing to be better prepared and adapt to what we knew was coming down the pike as far as the climate change. It was not how do we stop, but how do we deal with what is going to hit us and had already hit us. And looking in one of the areas of our waters, water is sacred, water is life to us and to all, that we were looking at how do we adapt? What can we do to help with the water that we're having to run off the melt early, way early than what is normally there. And it happened so quickly that a lot of the water was leaving the lands, our lands, a lot sooner than it did, which impacted our crops, impacted the way wildlife used the water. And so we needed to find a way that would slow some of that down. And in looking at our brothers, the beavers, who are natural water storage, gave the birth to the ideal of mimicry, imitating the beaver. And if we really look at some of the issues that are facing us within the natural resource area and trying to solve some of our problems, it is if we slow down, if we take some time and we go back to what was there, to the wildlife, to the land, to the plants, we can find solutions there. And so we headed in that direction, came up with the Mimicry project of going in and doing what the beaver were doing naturally. Although we did start the process in the two areas, was down in areas where there was some natural drainage, natural flows. But again, like I had stated, that we feel due to climate change that them flows had peaked early and were on their way down. And what was that doing to the riparian zones and the natural processes that use that drainage, that water area? And so in getting in there and establishing some small mimicry zones and showing where we could hold water back for a while or hold water in what was historically the way the water ran off, and the way it fed the riparian zone. It provided for those that needed it at that time. Eventually, toward the end of the season, you are going to see the low flows, but we don't want to see low flows in July when they should be low flows in September, October. And so in establishing that the first year, within a week to 2 weeks of putting in the beaver dams, you've seen a rise in the water storage. And in that storage then came the rise in the water table. And within that came back the riparian vegetation and the animals that and birds that use that, you know. And so we just seen that just that little bit that we did help make a difference. Again, it was down in a lower reach where, you know, water was running naturally. And so our mindset was, we want to take that thought, take that motto, and move it further back up into the watershed. Let's find a place where it's really starting to show. And let's see if this mimicry work will then bring back what we've seen in the lower reaches, bring back the riparian zones for a longer period of time. You've got the water storage, which is feeding the plants, and the plants are feeding the animals, and you know, it just works like that. And so it makes sense. It just makes good natural sense that you follow that process. You look to where the animals are doing their survival skills. And what can we do to imitate that, to mimic that, to know that they are survivors, we are survivors. And if we can take that and enhance it, you know, we're all going to benefit from that. And as we do that, then we can become an example of how it works. And it, you know, it's working with the beaver. It's working with really the reintroduction of the buffalo on grasslands and breaking up grasslands. And it's beneficial to keep down the weed and invasive plant species and bring back the natural grasses and flowers and species that everybody benefits from. And so it's with that concept in mind that we take it to a more traditional cultural level with our relationship with some of the animals. And with this one being concentrated on the beaver is where we're at and where we're trying to build from. And I'm hoping I didn't miss the mark and I answered the question or gave some better understanding of how we married the adaptation plan into a phase 2 of using what knowledge we do have and bringing something back that would benefit, be a win-win, you know, all the way around. And thus trying to, like I said, our next phase is to move it further up and hit some areas where if we can show we can hold on to it as we move back up, and we're not losing that in some of the areas that really need the water come the end of July, August, into September, then, you know, we're all going to benefit from that. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, well, thanks to both of you for sharing that. It's a good reminder. I mean, I think, you know, as we all know, like beaver mimicry and this this type of stream restoration, like everybody's kind of jumping on and trying to do this sort of work. And it's worth noting and recognizing that you all, the Blackfeet people, have known about this relationship and known about the beaver's ability to do this amazing restoration work for forever. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to open it up now to questions. We can, since again, we're a pretty small group here, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question. If you're more comfortable, you can also drop a question in the chat box and I'll read it off too.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question. This is Lily down in the Gallatin watershed. If some nuts and bolts questions and then maybe a more higher level question. How did you choose your sites to do your, it sounds like this was the first project and hopefully a series of many to come. How did you choose that first site?
The homeowner where we originally started on Willow Creek was having a lot of property damage. And so she is a traditionalist and one of our state legislators, Susan Weber. And so she did not want to trap them. She did not want to get rid of them. She really wanted a different approach to how she managed her land. And so this was really when we started getting the momentum of the adaptation plan going. And so we had community meetings with different various natural resource departmental heads. And after the community meetings, it was kind of just a pilot site to figure out what would most work on her landscape. And because it was in a main area with actually her property is just right diagonal from the tribal building. And so it was really affecting a lot of people, not only downstream, but upstream as well. So the beavers were just tearing apart everything, all of the trees right along the Willow Creek watershed, that All Chiefs Park that runs right through the town of Browning. And it was just becoming a nuisance. And so really taking a look back and thinking, how can we take this conflict and work with it? And so that's when we began to look to our other partners and around really what was going on with everyone around us. And we really start gaining traction with Susan Weber's property, which also led into the Connollys, who is an overgrazed private site. And so I don't know if Gerald can touch a little more if I missed.
Yeah, well, the Connolly property being a parcel of land that they came forth and again volunteered, and this is all a volunteer effort unless it's only on tribal lands, tribally owned lands, and not allotted lands. But when you have the property owners working with you, then that's kind of a plus there. Like Termaine has said that Susan was having some issues, but wanted to deal with it in a non-invasive manner. Got in and with that said, well, maybe we can do some pond levelers, which will allow the water to rise, but only so high. So it's not going to threaten home sites or whatever. How can we deal with the tree issue? Well, let's wrap the trees so they're not as accessible and enticing to the beaver. Going up a little bit further, I guess it would be down from our original site behind the college, further east. The Connollys had some overgrazing, but they also had a natural fin on their land. that is has some rare species here for the state of Montana. And so we were looking at that to try to, like I said, enhance that riparian vegetative zone there. And they just happen to lie within the same drainage along the cut bank drainage there. So starting first with the college site or some property that was relatively close, and because we were working with college students, it was a collaborative project with the BCC and their students, and getting them out hands-on and really becoming the stewards of, look what we're doing. We can, you know, we can see the impact of the work we're doing, and thus have that imprint on them. Not all 15 of them were going to, yeah, we're going to be here and this is going to be our lifelong journey. But if we could pull in 4 or 5 of the 15, I think it was an accomplished goal. The other 10 would have walked away with that hands-on knowledge, which I'm sure they would carry with them throughout their days, no matter where they went. And as long as they kept that concept close to their hearts and their souls, that as they move forward to spread their experience and their knowledge, you know, is getting the information out there. It was just that place by the college was a good place. They have some wetlands down on the property and whatnot. And so that was the reason for the first site in the first season. The second one was further down, and a lot of it, you know, sometimes has to do with property owners coming in and saying, yes, here we go, you know. And so as we move up, you would like to I guess keep it with landowners that are going to work with you. If it was tribal land, it wouldn't be an issue, but you know, waters flow where they want to flow. They don't flow where we say, we need you over here, you know. No, not like that. So like I said, we'll continue. We'll hit our third site. I'm hoping that, again, we'll go higher up into some areas where the water has left way sooner than it should have, and get in there and do some before and after photo shoots and whatnot, and just show that this is a good deal for areas that are needing to retain some waters. I was over in a meeting in Madison, Wisconsin, talking about our project as far as climate change and adaptation and what we were doing, and had explained, you know, the offshoot of the plan was the beaver mimicry project. And by the end, you know, the people had questions. There was 4 of us up there, Miami, San Francisco, New York area, but the questions were for me. And they were very, very curious about the beaver project. And they were going, can you send me a beaver? And I'm going, oh, my motto is, instead of a chicken in every pot, a beaver in every backyard. And that's how we should be looking at it.
And that also kind of guided the way with the involvement and the initiation of the volunteering was the Beaver Mimicry Guidebook for the landowners and homeowners. And that really helped gear us up so everybody can technically be their own beaver if they don't have a beaver in their backyard. We showed them how to be one. And so like I said, we have all of the steps. Everything is laid out to naturally start storing your own water, and really taking into consideration of landscape recovery and starting to heal that land of what has been done for countless years.
Is that?
Thanks. I was just going to say thanks for that, both of you. I'm going to drop in the chat, I've got the link for the Beaver Mimicry Guidebook. Thanks for mentioning that, Termaine. I'll share that with everybody right now. And I want to be, so I'd like to do breakouts at this point, but I also recognize we've only really gotten to ask one question and sort of a follow-up. So I think what I'll do is I'll open up the breakout rooms. And if Termaine and Gerald, if you don't mind just sticking around here in the main room for a minute, and if people want to ask more questions, we can do that. But you can also choose to go into a breakout room if you want. If you see somebody on the screen, you're like, I've been wanting to touch base with this person. We wanted to like open up that space as well. So in just a second, I'll open up the breakout rooms. And you'll be able to choose your own breakout room, and you can see, you should be able to see who else is in the breakout room. So if there's, someone you particularly want to talk to, you can go there. Otherwise, you can stay here in this main room, and we'll continue to do Q&A. And I'll pull everybody back to the main room just a little before 1. So hang on one second, and feel free to jump in with a question with one more question while I set up the breakout rooms.
I'm gonna ask another one if nobody else will.
Come on now, I can see questions on all of your faces. No wrong question.
Somebody has to interrupt me if you want to go.
Yeah, you're good.
Go. How was the permitting process?
Difficult.
That was
difficult.
Long.
I guess one of
that is
them,
laid out in there, by the way, just because it was so daunting. Yeah, that is laid out in there.
Okay, I'll do my homework. You don't have to.
Yeah, no, but it was so we have to go three different permits.
Yeah,
so we have to
early.
go through our own water quality standards 106 program permitting. We have to do the ALPO Army Corps of Engineers
Protection Ordinance,
and then we have to do the IRB, which is a in-house research board for the Blackfeet tribe.
Internal Review Board. Along with that, because we were in what then is considered waters of the U.S., there is the 404 permit that has to get through the Army Corps process. And then, like she had mentioned, the our own Aquatics Land Protection Ordinance submitted to them. And then also, because we do have TS authority for water quality standards, that we also are the ones the certifying entity for 401 certification. So yes, it's there. And again, I say, it's doable. It's doable. It's just that once you know that you want to do a project and you have a location, start now and say, allow yourself a year to 18 months to get them permits in place, but the sooner the better. And that's our lives now, permit. And I was thinking, no, it's our land, it's on the res, we can, it ain't always like that, You're free, but you're only so free, So yeah, it was.
And then on top of the environmental assessment, we had to do the cultural assessment as well, being on tribal lands.
There's a lot.
Yes.
But in that category of lessons learned.
Yes.
Lessons learned.
Challenge for sure. Challenge for sure.
Do you feel like it's going to be easier now that you've sort of paved the way? And
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's why you go first and we shall follow. Yes. You notice how you go into the forest or into the woods and they go, hey, the path is over here. Here is the way. How many of us go in there and go, we're going to make the path, and that's what we did, and jumping in there and with both feet. But you know, you just stick with it, endeavor to persevere, and you get through it. It's a lesson learned, and it's a lesson to share so that others can learn by what you went through. So.
And so we did have a lot of partners. We really used a lot of our own resources. So we don't have a lot of money working with the different partnerships. So we got creative. And so we actually reached out to forestry, and they provided the lodge pine pole. And so, you know, it was late season, kind of double whammy, right? Clearing out that forest and giving us the reusing. So it was just all the way around beneficial for both of us. And that partnership was just remarkable. And that is what I liked about the whole project, seeing the whole entire community come together, and the volunteering and the trading. So we actually wanted to stay on the Cupping Creek to harvest our willows that goes through the beaver mimicry. And so we stayed on there, and we actually used our knowledge, right? So we're like, hey, you want to learn about this project? And this guy needed his trail to his summer pasture cleared, right? And it was just a win-win for everybody. And he was just like enthralled with it. And so we actually start kind of cleaning up his actual beaver dam there while we were harvesting. And so really seeing that play out was just like, oh, hey, potential site, you know, he's higher up in the watershed. We can use this. And so we really start gaining all that, I don't want to say attention, but we start gaining the community interest. And we really got that buy-in through using these practices, you know, and those partnerships.
I've got a question. This is Adam from Montana State University Extension down in Bozeman. Thank you for sharing about your work. It's really interesting to hear about. What does the population of beaver look like on the reservation? Are there quite a few around, and are they mobile? Are they potentially going to move into some of these mimicry sites, and are people interested in trying to support that, trying to have the mimicry sites create a habitat that'll work for the beaver and then have them move in?
Well, that's the idea, and that's our hope. So we can only hope and pray that we can start it and they can finish it, right? So those are still early, some of the early questions we have as well. And what you know, basically starting their home for them, what we look like actively building the dam versus what the beaver looks like. So we are actually learning as well, but our hopes is that they do come and they do take over and maintain and sustain the ecology.
And it looked like Lily had a question, Lily Haynes.
Yeah, so I'm Lily Haynes. I work in Missoula with the Clark Fork Coalition. And so thank you guys for sharing about your project. I've been aware of it for a little while. We do a handful of beaver mimicry projects here in our watershed too. And my question for you is, I was wondering if, and maybe this is to Termaine, if you would talk about kind of your experience using your Indigenous knowledge systems and bringing them into the restoration project and the climate mitigation work, and the effects that had on kind of people's attitudes and buy-in to those issues and the need for that work. And then of course, my follow-up question is like, what recommendations might you have for other groups who are working in communities that don't have that cultural basis to kind of develop similar success there?
Wow, yeah, no, we're all tribes aren't the same for sure. But again, we turn to our elders, we turn to our traditionalists who know these songs, who know these stories, who help heal and steward these landscapes. And so we actually gifted our fellows, our high school students, and our, what are they? The Watershed Corps members. So we actually gifted them the songs that would protect our waterways, that would, that our one elder, our cultural resource management, John Murray, actually gave the students the song. So when you're gifted, you're transferred that knowledge. So that was a classroom in itself. So having that, and some of them never even knew their cultural side, you know, and a lot of them, it was just like, whoa, you know, and seeing their faces and seeing, you know, it was just remarkable to see that process. And some of them, yeah, they never engaged and never even knowing what's going on. And them just like, wow, it really turned on a light for them. And it really made them more aware to what other animals could do. And that's where I start getting a lot of really different questions that I couldn't answer, right? And it's just like one step at a time. But I say, you know, all lands indigenous, and I would say just go and find that respected elder, gather those stories, because you're on the landscape, right? You're helping that steward, so you're gonna be successful any way you go, as long as you respect the land and the way it was brought to the landscape. Does that make sense?
It's a great answer, and that story about, you know, that gifting that song, I think really gets at how you can transform people into buying in and really caring about those issues, maybe when they weren't before.
Right.
I can't tell if Gerald was gonna add something or not.
Okay, what was the question?
It's okay.
I mean, we can go to another question too, if somebody else has a question, or if, yeah, either way.
Sure.
Did I answer it somewhat? I'm sorry, Lily. I felt like, okay.
Yeah, I'm Peter Dudley, Big Sky Watershed Corps.
Hi.
And I'm with Montana Audubon. I guess I was wondering, what's the long-term vision of the space? Because on the one hand, yeah, it's ecological impact and what that's going to mean for the land, but are you doing monitoring? Is there upkeep? Does that become a place for field trips with school groups? Yeah, what's your vision for the future? I don't know if I froze or everyone else froze too.
I think Termaine just froze. It looks like everyone else is still. Oh
yeah. Oh yeah.
You're back. You're back.
Okay. And Gerald, you heard the question, right? I totally froze.
So I get these little 30-second glitches where I can see you, but I can't hear you guys. You freeze up. I call it's a commercial. So now that I'm back.
I'm sorry, Peter. I didn't hear the question.
It's fine. I can repeat
the question.
Yeah, I was wondering, what is the long-term vision of the space? Are you doing monitoring? Is there upkeep involved, or do you plan on having that as like an educational site too, as well as the ecological impact that is inherently part of the project?
Well, yeah, as we move into this next third phase, like I was saying, and hitting a spot that is really needing to hold on to some water, but always keeping that connection and communication line with the college, so that we're keeping that educational process still rolling. And a part of the process as a whole is to continue with how well is our initial site doing? How well is the next site doing? And it's been a couple years. Of course, there's going to be some upkeep and maintenance. You know, you'll get the high flows, and I think when they went back, a majority of the sites did hold, but a couple of them needed to get back in and get some repair work done to them. It's nothing like what the beaver wouldn't be doing anyway. You know what I'm saying? Get in there, maintain that house. You gotta patch holes and do what you need to keep it up. holding on to that concept, so that, you know, eventually these can become outdoor classrooms where you can actually go out and see what the process was and how it worked and how it's still working. And, you know, it ain't always perfect the first time, but at least you have something to build onto and say, hey, next time, you know, we'll do it this way, or we'll need to do it that way. It's a learning process. And, you know, we're all thankful for that. And that's the way we're going to roll.
And hopefully less irrigation long-term for our ranchers. So that was part of the Beaver Mimicry Guidebook as well, to really, so, you know, they could keep their own maintenance. And that is what we found a little bit challenging, because, you know, not everyone wants their own beaver, right? They don't want to do the work. So even laying it out is kind of, it's a challenge, right? So really getting a solid team and really just showing how is the way I found to be most aggressive in working with these landscapes.
Termaine, did you hear my question?
Yeah, no, and I'm just thinking how to answer it.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I had some outside interference. I got my wireless headphones on. And go ahead and answer the question. I'll see if I can jump on the end.
So we're just kind of rolling. I mean, we are, you know, it's kind of learning as we go, right? And it's really we run with what successes we have, and we face what challenges we get, right? And we get a lot of challenges. And so, yeah, we've seen our beaver dams just blow through. Of course, our water is just like phenomenal, right? And so it just like powers out, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like that took so many hours. And it's just like, okay, so maybe we should like move it up, you know, and just doing the double back beaver BDAs instead of the spatial. And again, our landscapes and our banks, we have to imagine this overgrown flooding. And these aren't cricks, right? These are like cricks, and we're like, and so it's just, it's a lot of work. And we didn't let that stop us. You know, we kept going with what we had. And I feel like, hey, this watershed, it did succeed, but let's go up, see what higher, you know, we can get. And then if not, hey, let's move to the next one. Okay, just keep going. And I feel like it's just a learning process. Do you see the question in the chat, Gerald?
It says beaver infrastructure is inherently deformable and ever-changing. How does that factor into the project success? Well, I would try to say I follow the beaver and try to say, well, where will it build next? And how do we work with it so that the impacts of their infrastructure isn't going to impact certain areas. And I believe it's our responsibility as we continue to step into nature's front yard and thinking that we can put ourselves there without impacts. And when we do start to suffer impacts, then it's their fault. But we have to go in there with a mindset of seeing what was there and how we can be there in harmony with them, instead of thinking we're going to go in there and dominate. And that's the reason why you have homeowners with issues on flooding is saying, oh, we're going to put it here, we're right next to this nice little creek, knowing that we have beaver going to come in and say, yeah, we need more water backed up here, and you know,
yeah,
and live in harmony with the construct of what the beaver's infrastructure is, instead of trying to come in and say, this is my land and I'll do with it what I want. We've got to always keep the mindset of staying in harmony. And we've got to teach this to our younger people. We got to teach this to establish, I don't want to say it, programs, housing especially, of, you know, when we build, how do we build friendly? How do we build sustainable? How do we build if this happens, that the constructs in the home system is already there? It's not like we got to go out and pay, you know, high price for this. No, we built the home with this already in there. If we need to jack it up and let the river run under, so be it. But, you know, that's an extreme case, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Gerald, I think that's maybe not the jacking up the house, but that idea of, right, having a little humility, right, and like living in harmony with the beaver and with our, you know, with our other relatives in the natural world, I think is just a wonderful note to end on. So thank you for that. I just wanted to, was there something else?
Oh, I was just gonna say, a river runs through it.
There we go. And we're done.
Do I need to drop my mouth?
Yeah. Just leave the room.
Thank you both so much for joining us. I do have a couple of real quick announcements for everybody, just to let you know. The MWCC Watershed Fund, we do have a little bit of a new partnership with the Bureau of Land Management that is for doing basically beaver mimicry work, but specifically providing resources to one local group per year. We don't have a whole lot of funding for like the learning component, like learning about these processes in a really comprehensive way, and then also planning and implementing a project. And so unfortunately, because the funding is so little, it's not a competitive process. We're just kind of like reaching out organically. And we're basically looking for groups who haven't done this work before, but who are interested. And we're looking for a group for 2023 at this point. And the idea, speaking of, I think Termaine mentioned, or maybe both of you, you know, like building that path, right? And recognizing that the Blackfeet Nation is building this path for us. And I think there are local watershed groups that are on this path as well. And so the funding is set up so that we fund one group 1 year, and then they kind of teach the next group the next year. And so we're looking for a local watershed organization, ideally in central Montana, just due to logistical reasons, that's interested in learning about and implementing one of these projects starting in 2023. And so if you are interested in that, and again, you haven't done that sort of work yet, and also you have to work with the BLM on either BLM managed lands or lands that are associated or adjacent to BLM managed lands. And so I think Emma was going to drop my email address in the chat box, but if you know of a group, if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me about that. And then what else? And then just a reminder that we will be hosting these lunchtime conversations about once a month. Next week will be November 10th with Wendy Weaver, who is with Montana Freshwater Partners. You may know her from, they were formerly called Montana Aquatic Resources Services, MARS. She'll be just talking about all the services that they have to offer to local watershed groups. So that'll be a good one too. I think Emma's going to drop that information in there. You can find that all on the MWCC training page. And when you go to that training page at the top, there's also information for a capacity building workshop that we're going to be co-hosting with Future West the following day, November 11th, and that's going to be a half-day thing. And so if that's geared at local community leaders and organizations who are trying to adapt to all the changes, the constant state of change that we're in, and how do you stay true to your mission and vision within that. So if you're interested in that, that's on the training page, along with upcoming conservation conversations. And lastly, I will today or maybe tomorrow, I'm going to send everybody who's on this call just a really brief, like 3-question survey, because this is our first one. So I just want to get a little bit of feedback on so just be thinking about what you really liked about this conversation, what you might want to change or improve. And that goes for Termaine and Gerald too, since you were our first presenters. So if you could respond to that, I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, last of all, just thank you so much. I don't know. Gerald, are you okay there?
Yeah, I'll just make sure I got my IT stuff in working order next time. I apologize.
Oh, no, it all worked out. I heard you guys didn't even have internet earlier today, so
oh, we did.
It all worked out great.
Smoke signals.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
But yeah, thank you so much, Termaine and Gerald. We really appreciate you taking the time. It was great to learn from you and talk with you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see everything.
Yeah, and thanks for recognizing us for the work we do.
Yeah.
Right on. And I feel good seeing your faces and knowing that you guys care. I mean, there's people out there that care what's happening, what we're doing. And anytime that we're able to come on and be with you, I wish we were face to face, but hey, it is what it is. But we'll see each other down the road, and we were put here for a purpose, and right on.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.